At 44, I found myself entangled in an unbelievable situation, in bed with a woman 2 decades younger, all fueled by a thirst for vengeance. Life has a peculiar way of blindsiding you, especially when you think you've finally grasped its complexities. But I'm jumping ahead. Let me rewind to the genesis of this whole ordeal. My name is Gavin, an ordinary middle-aged man. My existence was unremarkable until it took this drastic detour. For 16 years, I was married to Paige. We met in our late 20s, a time when my optimism outweighed my gray hairs. Paige possessed a radiant energy, the kind that illuminated any space and made everyone feel valued. I was captivated by this quality, believing myself to be incredibly fortunate. Our marriage, like any other, experienced its share of highs and lows. It wasn't perfect, but I never felt it needed to be. We had our disagreements, yet we always managed to reconnect, or so I naively assumed. It turned out I was living in a fool's paradise, clinging to the belief that perseverance would guarantee a happy ending. Then there's Sean, my supposed best friend of nearly 2 decades. Our bond originated from our early days working together. Tragedy struck Sean when his wife died in a car accident 10 years ago, leaving him the sole caregiver for their daughter, Hannah. I vividly recall his devastation during that initial year. He was barely functioning. Paige and I offered our support, Paige especially. She embraced Hannah, attempting to fill the maternal void. Hannah practically resided at our home, even referring to me as Uncle Gavin. Over time, she confided in me about teenage matters, boys, school, typical adolescent concerns. I viewed her as a younger sister, while she likely saw me as an older brother figure. Sean seemed to appreciate our involvement. Living nearby, he was a constant presence, almost like an extension of our family. I never anticipated how this closeness would morph into something sinister. One fateful day, my world imploded. I wasn't scheduled to be home, having left work early due to a sudden, intense pain. My compassionate boss suggested I take the rest of the day off. My intention was to go home, crawl into bed, and sleep it off. However, fate had other plans. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed Sean's car. While not unusual, something felt amiss, an unsettling premonition. The front door was locked, a peculiarity considering Paige rarely locked it during the day, especially with company. Unlocking the door, I entered a house shrouded in an eerie silence. Then I heard it, faint at first, escalating into unmistakable moans and hushed voices. My heart lurched. My mind struggled to process the reality unfolding. This couldn't be happening, but it was. Reacting instinctively, I ascended the stairs, my body propelled by a primal fear. Each step felt like a descent into a nightmare. Without conscious thought, I retrieved a baseball bat from the closet. Someone was going to pay for this transgression. Reaching the bedroom door, I hesitated for what seemed like an eternity before pushing it open. The sight that greeted me was more horrifying than anything I could have imagined. Paige, my wife of 16 years, was with Sean. They froze, their faces draining of color. Paige's mouth gaped open, but words failed her. Sean scrambled off the bed, the image of guilt personified. I remained silent, advancing and slamming the bat against the floor with enough force to crack the wood. Sean flinched, but my rage wasn't directed at him yet. Their betrayal was etched onto their faces. Paige, always adept at talking her way out of situations, finally spoke. "Gavin, wait. Don't do anything rash. Let's talk about this." "Talk? You want to discuss this now?" I retorted, releasing the bat and striking Sean's face. Once wasn't enough, so I hit him again. Blood flowed from his split lip. Paige shrieked, clutching my arm, but I shrugged her off, My fury was far from spent. "What the hell, Gavin?" Sean gasped, eyes wide with terror. "Gavin, it's not what it looks like," he stammered. "How long?" I roared, my voice trembling with rage. "How long has this been going on?" Neither could answer. Their silence was pathetic. I didn't wait for their justifications or fabrications. Snatching the bat, I stormed out, heading straight for Sean's car. I unleashed my fury upon it, smashing the windshield, denting the hood, and ripping off the side mirrors. My thoughts raced, consumed by the question of how this could have happened. I then got into my car, driving aimlessly at first. My mind was fixated on one thing: obliteration through alcohol. I needed a drink, I needed to escape. The only place offering solace was my local bar. It was a sanctuary where the world seemed less chaotic, where the turmoil temporarily subsided. I entered, unnoticed by the usual patrons, their eyes glazed over with their own private struggles. I sat at the counter wordlessly, yet I could feel their gaze upon me. It wasn't every day someone like me appeared at noon, looking like I'd just lost a battle. "Whiskey," I mumbled to the bartender, Levi, a seasoned veteran behind the bar, a purveyor of drinks and silent confidant to countless tales of woe. He poured me a glass without a word. I downed it in one gulp, the burn barely registering. By my third drink, Levi leaned in with concern. "Gavin, you all right? You don't usually show up this early." His voice, usually calm and steady, held a note of worry. I let out a harsh laugh, more akin to a bark. "Ever walk in on your wife, sleeping with your best friend?" The question hung in the air, laced with bitterness. Levi's eyes widened, yet he seemed more resigned than shocked. "Damn," he whistled. "That's rough, man." "Rough doesn't even begin to describe it," I replied, staring into my whiskey, as if searching for answers in its depths. I don't know why, perhaps fueled by the alcohol or the need to purge the toxic emotions consuming me, but I confessed everything to Levi: the discovery, the shock, the betrayal, the destructive act with the bat, the damage to Sean's car, the punches I threw, the feeling of my world crumbling. Levi listened intently, a silent witness to the wreckage of my life. When I finished, he placed a firm, comforting hand on my shoulder. "Man, that's a shitty hand you've been dealt. No other way to put it." I nodded, my gaze fixed on my empty glass. "Shitty didn't even come close." "But listen," Levi continued, leaning closer. "You can't let this break you. Don't let them win." His words resonated, and for the first time that day, I actually paused to think. "What would you do in my shoes?" I asked, my voice raw with pain. Levi didn't hesitate. "If it were me, I'd probably do what you're doing, get plastered, break a few things, but then..." He reached for a glass, poured himself a whiskey, and raised it towards me. "I'd get even, make them regret ever crossing you." We clinked glasses. A smirk, the first genuine emotion I'd felt all day, touched my lips. We both drained our glasses, but after the toast, Levi set his down with a decisive thud. "Just be smart about it, Gavin. Don't let this turn you into someone you're not. You're a good guy. Don't lose that." Hours blurred by in a haze of whiskey and rage. I was oblivious to how I'd get home, and frankly, it didn't matter. Levi, anticipating my state, intercepted my attempt to stumble out, grabbing my keys. "You're not driving anywhere, Gavin. You can pick these up when you're sober." I wanted to protest, but deep down, I knew he was right. Resigned, I slumped back onto the bar stool. "Already called you a cab," Levi said, holding up his phone. The taxi arrived, and I barely managed to get inside without collapsing. The driver remained silent, thankfully. The city lights blurred past the window as I stared out, everything feeling surreal. My next memory is of stumbling through my front door, the place where it all began. The house felt cold and devoid of life, the warmth seemingly extinguished. I collapsed onto the couch, fully clothed, and passed out. The next morning, I awoke to a brutal hangover. My head throbbed, my mouth felt like sandpaper, and every muscle ached. However, these physical discomforts paled in comparison to the emotional agony. Despite the pounding headache, one thought pierced through the divorce. I had to initiate the process. I contacted Connor, a divorce lawyer I'd met at a work function. We weren't close, but I knew he was experienced in complex and messy divorces like mine. "Connor, it's Gavin. I need to talk about getting a divorce," I stated bluntly, lacking the energy for pleasantries. I recounted the entire ordeal, Paige's infidelity, our 16 years of marriage, the whole sordid affair. I held nothing back. Connor needed all the details if I wanted to ensure Paige didn't unfairly benefit from the separation. The call provided a modicum of relief. Then my gaze fell upon Paige's work laptop on the dining room table. She had a crucial presentation the following day, one she'd been meticulously preparing for weeks. An idea sparked in my mind, a way to complicate her life just a little bit more. I sat down, opened the laptop and began navigating her files. I wasn't a computer expert, but I possessed enough knowledge to inflict some damage. Locating the presentation was easy. As I reviewed the slides, a plan materialized. Knowing her meeting was with Korean executives, I quickly found some culturally insensitive material that would likely cause offense. I subtly inserted it into the presentation, hidden enough to avoid detection until it was too late. For good measure, I added a few inappropriate images, strategically placed deeper within the slides, where they wouldn't be discovered until she was mid-pitch. I wasn't content with just ending our marriage. I wanted to sabotage her professional triumph as well. After taking some painkillers, I lay down on the couch. By evening, my headache had subsided, just in time for Paige's arrival. She entered as if nothing was amiss, likely assuming her usual charm would smooth things over. "Gavin, we need to talk," she began, her voice calm, yet laced with an irritating edge. Without looking at her, I responded, "Go to hell, Paige. We're getting a divorce." She didn't flinch. "You're being ridiculous," she retorted, crossing her arms, anticipating the disagreement to dissipate like a minor squabble over household expenses. "We'll see who's ridiculous," I muttered, brushing past her and heading outside. The house felt suffocating, yet we were both trapped within its confines. The tension was palpable. Refusing to sleep beside her, I resigned myself to another night on the couch. However, I wouldn't remain home that night. Shortly after midnight, my phone buzzed. Initially dismissing it as spam, I glanced at the screen and saw the name. Hannah, Sean's daughter. I answered, still groggy. "Hello?" Her voice was slurred, almost unintelligible. It quickly became clear she was intoxicated. She'd been out partying and needed a ride home. For some inexplicable reason, she'd contacted me instead of her father. She didn't want Sean to know, and I suppose in that moment, she trusted me more than anyone else. So I got dressed, retrieved my keys, and drove to the address she provided. When I arrived, Hannah was slumped against a wall, barely able to stand. The overpowering smell of alcohol enveloped me as she staggered towards the car. I opened the door, and she practically tumbled into the passenger seat. "Hannah, what the hell are you doing?" I asked, more concerned than angry. "This isn't you." She waved me off, her head lolling against the seat. "My boyfriend. He cheated on me," she mumbled, on the verge of tears, yet maintaining a strange, drunken smile. "She was a mess, confused, emotional, and lost in her own pain. I felt a flicker of sympathy. I knew exactly what that felt like. "You're not the only one who's been betrayed," I muttered, my eyes fixed on the road. She turned to me, curiosity cutting through her intoxication. "Who else?" I sighed, and without divulging too much detail, I told her about Paige and Sean. I kept it brief, just enough for her to grasp the situation. I didn't want to relive the sordid details. Her voice softened. "Oh, Uncle Gavin," she whispered, leaning closer and placing a hand on my leg. "I'm so sorry." Initially, I interpreted her gesture as an attempt to offer comfort, but her hand continued its upward journey along my thigh. My body tensed. "Hannah, stop," I said firmly, removing her hand. She ignored me, her hand returning, moving deliberately, her intentions no longer ambiguous. "I just want to make you feel better," she whispered, her fingers tracing my leg. I wanted to resist. Truly I did. But the confluence of anger, betrayal, and alcohol eroded my resolve. At some point, I stopped caring. Perhaps it was a desire for retribution, or maybe the alcohol clouded my judgment. Regardless, when she unzipped my pants and leaned in, I didn't stop her. In that moment, everything else, Sean, Paige, the pain, vanished. It was replaced by a twisted sense of satisfaction, the knowledge that I was crossing a line from which there was no return. When she finished, she leaned back with a grin, her lipstick smeared, her makeup a mess. "There's a hotel nearby," she said softly, her voice laced with suggestion. "You don't want to go home, and neither do I." I didn't argue. We drove to the hotel, and the night descended into something I never imagined myself doing with Hannah. I may have been 44, but in that room, age seemed irrelevant. Somehow I kept pace with her. The next morning, she woke me with a smile. "Let's take a picture," she said, reaching for my phone since hers was dead. Driven by an impulse I couldn't quite grasp, I allowed her to stay. Her face was a canvas of smudged cosmetics, a crimson stain lingering on her lips. I captured the moment with a photograph. The act felt strange, almost ritualistic. We then retreated back to the bed's embrace. When I finally surfaced from sleep, the world swam back into focus, accompanied by the throbbing pulse of a hangover. Reality's weight pressed down, heavy and unavoidable. While I didn't lament the events of the night, a sense of foreboding settled upon me, a premonition of escalating complications. Leaving the hotel room and stepping into the stark light of morning felt disorienting, dreamlike. The mundane world around me should have felt familiar, yet it was coated in a layer of unreality. An unspoken tension hung in the air between us, thick and oppressive like the stillness before a storm. It was Amelia who shattered the silence, her cigarette flaring to life. Exhaling a plume of smoke, she spoke with a disconcerting nonchalance, as if discussing the weather. "You know," she began, her voice casual, "you could show that picture to my father." I froze, turning to face her. "What?" She inhaled deeply, her gaze meeting mine with a sideways glance, a smile playing on her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm serious. Show him that picture." Her voice held a chilling indifference. My mind struggled to process her words. Why would you want that?" Amelia shrugged, the unsettling smile still present. "I've been trying to escape his grasp for years. Every attempt to gain independence is met with the same tired rhetoric, the 'you can't survive without me' speech. I'm done. Maybe seeing that photo will finally sever the chains. Maybe he'll finally step back and allow me to live my own life." The weight of her words settled upon me. This wasn't simply teenage rebellion. This was a desperate plea for liberation from years of perceived confinement, suffocating under Daniel's control. She was prepared to weaponize our shared transgression to shatter her world, if it meant achieving freedom. "I can't do that," I responded, though the thought had already flickered across my mind, a dark temptation. It would be another act of destruction, another wound inflicted upon Daniel. "Your choice," she replied, discarding the cigarette as if it held no significance. Her apathy was unnerving. "But if you reconsider, you know how to reach me." The drive back to her apartment was shrouded in silence, her words reverberating in my thoughts. The photograph felt like a ticking time bomb, a catalyst for impending chaos. A part of me, a dark and vengeful part, craved the ensuing destruction, the catharsis of watching everything burn. Returning home, the atmosphere was palpably tense. Olivia's laptop remained on the dining table, a stark reminder of the turmoil I had unleashed. She was oblivious to the impending storm. The crucial presentation she had poured weeks into, the one that held the key to her career, was about to be decimated. Her arrival was heralded by the jarring slam of the front door, the pictures on the wall vibrating in response. Her face was a mask of fury, her eyes refusing to meet mine. Before I could utter a word, the laptop was airborne, colliding with the wall with a sickening crack, the screen splintering into a web of broken glass. "You imbecile!" she shrieked, her voice trembling with rage. Terror warred with her anger. "You sabotaged my presentation, didn't you? Do you comprehend the magnitude of your actions?" I remained seated, maintaining a facade of composure despite the turmoil within. "Yes, I'm fully aware of what I did." Her hands trembled, and for a fleeting moment I anticipated a physical blow. "They terminated my employment, Gavin. I was publicly humiliated. My professional reputation is irreparably damaged. No one will hire me after this. My career is over." I raised an eyebrow, unmoved by her distress. "Good." A guttural cry escaped her lips as she overturned a nearby chair. "You've ruined me. You've destroyed everything. Why? Was this some twisted act of revenge? Let me tell you something, Gavin. Daniel and I have been involved for years. We didn't even wait until after his wife's funeral." Her words struck me with the force of a physical blow. Betrayal, I had anticipated. But this, the callous disregard for the recent bereavement, it was a level of cruelty I hadn't foreseen. Nausea churned in my stomach. How could I have been so oblivious? While I offered solace and support to Daniel, they were engaged in a clandestine affair behind my back. Rising to my feet, my fists clenched, I spat out the words, "Go to hell, Olivia." She spun around and retreated, slamming the bedroom door, leaving me amidst the remnants of our shattered life. But I wasn't finished, not even close. Retrieving my phone, I navigated to Daniel's contact and located the photograph of Amelia. My finger hovered over the send button for a moment. Then I pressed it, releasing the image, the smudged makeup, the defiant look in her eyes, into the digital ether. The consequences were irrelevant. I wanted him to experience the same agony, the same betrayal, the same chaotic destruction that had consumed my life. 15 minutes later, Daniel's car screeched to a halt outside. He didn't bother with the formality of knocking, bursting through the door, his face contorted with rage. "What the hell is this, Gavin?" he roared, brandishing his phone, the image of Amelia glaring back at us. I remained seated. "What do you think it is?" He lunged, his fist connecting with my jaw, sending me stumbling backward. I retaliated, and we became entangled in a furious brawl, crashing into furniture, grabbing at anything within reach, driven by a primal need to inflict pain. This wasn't a choreographed fight. It was raw, visceral, fueled by pure, unadulterated rage. Two broken men, lost in a maelstrom of anger, intent on mutual destruction. We eventually collapsed onto the floor, bloodied and exhausted, gazing up at the ceiling. Silence descended, heavy and suffocating. Words felt superfluous. We had both decimated our lives, each in our own way, and now we lay amidst the ruins. Then the wail of sirens pierced the air. Moments later, the police breached the door, alerted by a concerned neighbor. We were hauled to our feet and escorted to waiting patrol cars. I spent the next few hours in the sterile confines of the police station, lost in silent contemplation. Neither of us pressed charges. We were too depleted to continue the fight. We were released with a cursory warning. Returning home that night, a shift occurred within me. It wasn't a sense of relief, not precisely, but a strange calmness settled over me, a sense of finality. The anger, the bitterness, had been purged, leaving a void. Paige, Daniel, even Amelia. They no longer held any significance. They could pursue their own paths, their destinies intertwined or diverging. It no longer mattered. I had reached a point of detachment. The subsequent divorce from Olivia was swift and uneventful. There was nothing left to salvage, no embers of love or trust to rekindle. We signed the papers, divided our possessions, and parted ways. The sale of the house followed a few months later. The house, once a symbol of hope and shared dreams, now felt like a tomb, each room haunted by memories of arguments, betrayal, and the final, devastating implosion. Its sale brought a sense of liberation, a closing of a painful chapter. We established separate lives in different parts of the city. I found a small, unassuming apartment, a sanctuary of solitude and a symbol of a new beginning. Olivia's whereabouts became irrelevant, as long as our paths didn't cross. The last thing either of us needed was a chance encounter, a painful reminder of shared history. Amelia, surprisingly, thrived. She escaped her father's control, secured a promising job in another city, and began forging her own independent life. Observing her transformation from afar evoked a peculiar sense of pride. We maintained sporadic contact, brief conversations devoid of emotional weight. We checked in on each other occasionally, but the unspoken agreement remained. Face-to-face contact was best avoided. The events of that night remained confined to the past, a shared secret best left undisturbed. Olivia's trajectory, however, was less fortunate. The repercussions of her professional downfall reverberated through her industry. Reputation, in her field, was paramount, and the whispers of her public meltdown spread like wildfire. Securing new employment proved challenging, if not impossible. The stories of her boardroom debacle preceded her, branding her as a liability. The irony of her relationship with Daniel was not lost on me. After the initial fallout, they attempted to build a life together, perhaps believing their shared transgression had forged a bond. However, a foundation built on deceit and betrayal is inherently unstable. The thrill of clandestine meetings soon faded, replaced by the harsh realities of their actions. Their lives spiraled downwards, fueled by alcohol, a desperate attempt to numb the pain and regret. But alcohol is a treacherous crutch, exacerbating rather than alleviating suffering. Their relationship ultimately imploded in a spectacularly destructive fashion. I heard through mutual acquaintances that a particularly vicious argument culminated in Sean's arrest for domestic violence, leaving Olivia hospitalized. I didn't delve into the specifics. I had reached a point of emotional detachment, their fates no longer holding any sway over my own. My own life gradually began to mend. The path wasn't smooth, but slowly, incrementally, things began to improve. I'd always prided myself on self-sufficiency, believing I could shoulder any burden alone. But the weight of anger, guilt, and betrayal had proved too heavy. Swallowing my pride, I sought professional help. Opening up to a therapist was initially difficult, but with each session, the necessity became increasingly apparent. Unburdening myself of the emotional baggage I had carried for so long felt like shedding a heavy cloak, a profound sense of relief washing over me. I also resumed my visits to the bar. Levi, the bartender, had been a constant presence, a silent witness to my unraveling. One night, fueled by alcohol, I finally confided in him, recounting the entire saga: Olivia, Daniel, Amelia, the fight, the photograph, everything. I braced myself for judgment, but it never came. He listened patiently, offering the occasional nod of acknowledgement, as if he had encountered far darker secrets. When I recounted sending the photograph to Daniel, he let out a low whistle and shook his head. "Man," he said, pouring us another round, "that's some heavy stuff." We clinked glasses and drank. Then we laughed, not because the situation was humorous, but because sometimes laughter is the only defense against the crushing weight of reality. Reflecting on the past, I've often questioned the value of my revenge. Did it provide any resolution? Probably not. But it offered a sense of closure I hadn't anticipated. Olivia and Daniel faced the consequences of their actions. Amelia found her escape. And me? I survived. For those who have listened to my story, thank you. It was a story that needed to be told, from beginning to end. Life is chaotic, unpredictable, and often cruel. But we endure, we persevere, and if we're fortunate, we learn from the experience. Did I make the right choices? I don't know, but I'm still here, still moving forward. And that, in itself, is a victory. Life is tough, but sometimes all we can do is laugh and keep going. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if the story was interesting.